Our first GNF this afternoon is focusing on going for humanity, creating a responsible and sustainable universe. It is my great pleasure to welcome here on stage NASA Deputy Administrator Pam Melroy, who will explore today how NASA is considering the ethical, legal, and social implications of performing future missions to explore the Moon, Mars, and beyond. Now it is my very honor to welcome Pam Melroy on stage. Please.
Thank you, Christian. Good afternoon. Thanks for being here today, and my sincere thanks to the International Astronautical Federation for organizing all of this week's events, which are a wonderful opportunity for us to celebrate the successes of the past year, the things that we learned, but also to come together and discuss some of the most pressing issues that are facing us as we extend our presence out further beyond low Earth orbit and out into the solar system. One of the great things about this conference is that it allows us to dream together. We can plan a future where we all have the opportunity to learn and explore. That's so integral to this conference. But we all know that the key to exploration is that we must be doing it in a way that is responsible, sustainable, and transparent, because that's the only way all of humanity can reap the benefits of scientific discovery, and we think that's incredibly important. Since the dawn of humanity, people have explored to learn about the world around them, to find new resources and improve their existence. And at NASA, we put immense value into exploring space in ways that benefit humanity. We want to understand the history of the solar system and the universe, and one of the best ways to do that is off the planet. Imagery from the James Webb Space Telescope is revolutionizing our understanding of the cosmos. And likewise, we can only understand what's happening on the Earth by looking at it at scale from orbit. It's very hard to instrument the whole Earth. So we need to study the Earth the way we study other planets, close up, and that data is essential to prepare and give to decision makers as we experience the effects of climate change. And of course, the microgravity research that we do every day on the International Space Station provides us with new insights into biological and physical processes that here on Earth are masked by gravity, and we can't see them. So those insights not only help us understand and explore physical processes, but they can actually improve life here on Earth for humanity. And of course, they're going to be able to better protect humans who go out and explore off the planet. So we do know that as we explore, we're going to answer a bunch of questions, and then every time we learn something new, we have a dozen more questions that crowd up behind it. And sometimes we have unintended or unexpected consequences, and I'll be talking a little more about that. But we also have to know that we can't answer all those questions alone. We need partners who want to explore with us to answer those scientific questions. So more than that, we have to work together to define how we're going to explore, which is just as important as what we do when we reach our destination. We've really found on the International Space Station how important it is for us to have relationships and conversations with our partners, getting to know them as human beings and work with them. It really helped us a lot. I was a part of assembling the International Space Station when I was in the astronaut corps. And we had huge challenges. We were building something that had never been done before, and we had problems sometimes. And those difficult conversations were made much easier because we had relationships. So we're really committed to having those relationships. Now, we have a new paradigm emerging. NASA's Moon to Mars exploration approach calls for establishing a long-term presence at the Moon for scientific exploration so that we can learn how to live and conduct science away from home. And exploring the Moon first will prepare us for a future where we can send human missions to the red planet, which is one of the few places in the solar system where life may have existed. What we learn at the moon about the history of our solar system will help us better understand the history of the Earth, but it will also prepare us for what we might find on Mars. So last year, to guide our endeavors, we published 63 objectives on what we want to achieve and what we need to achieve at the moon to go on to Mars and do scientific exploration. And as a part of that development process, we garnered feedback from you, our international partners, our industry partners, academia around the world. We started with 50 objectives and expanded and updated to 63 based on that feedback. And we also added 9 recurring tenets to address common themes across the objectives that didn't really stand as a single objective on its own, but influenced every objective. So the tenets describe the aspects of the strategy that are kind of foundational to all the objectives. And the rationale for some of them is very easy to see. For example, returning crew safely and mitigating impacts to their health. Everything we do should make sure that we're addressing that issue. We are not going to sacrifice crew health to achieve any of our objectives. And of course, we have to maximize crew time so that we can get high-value science done and minimize the maintenance and other support tasks. So in other words, human time is really precious. Let's use it wisely. So of relevance to what I want to talk about today, we have a recurring tenet stating that we will conduct all activities for the exploration and use of outer space for peaceful purposes, consistent with international obligations for responsible behavior. So certainly this means preserving the lunar and Martian environments, protecting science value at very high interest sites, but it also includes consideration of international commitments, norms, and national regulations. Those 2 words are very critical: responsible behavior. So beyond environmental and legal issues, what does that really mean? So we know we have to comply with the law, but what else does it mean? It's quite interesting. Quite spontaneously, the architecture definition document and the preparation team and the team at NASA, which released that architecture definition document last April, they picked up on that and they said the responsible use of the Moon to Mars architecture may require deeper scrutiny of cultural and societal implications of future exploration. We think we need to spend more time on this. The very act of executing our test missions on Artemis 2, Artemis 3, Artemis 4, and 5, they're going to help us learn what we need to know to determine what precedents we should be setting while we explore. There are many things we won't know until we take it out on a test flight, but we need to be thinking about the implications. We need to address the ethical and legal issues that impact technical and operational details and how we're going to behave in the future, such as selecting operating sites that are going to balance human exploration, scientific discovery, resource utilization, historical value, and more. Given the flurry of missions on their way to the moon, it's obvious that we're in an exploration renaissance, which is very exciting for all of us who have waited for this moment for many decades. But the time is now to come together as nations of the world to talk about some of these other more complicated considerations. So let me talk about the Artemis Accords for a moment. In plain language, the Artemis Accords take the next step beyond the Outer Space Treaty to create a practical set of principles and guidelines for how we should approach exploring the moon, allowing for the adoption of norms of responsible behavior and best practices. And today, 29 nations have signed on to the Accords and committed to the peaceful exploration of outer space. We have the beginnings now, just the very beginnings, of a policy roadmap for how we should conduct ourselves in the quest for knowledge, while opening a door for all nations to benefit and seek additional opportunities for economic growth and for strategic capabilities in scientific research for each individual country. There is a ton more work to be done, but I have to say, super fun. A year ago, the Artemis Accords met at IAC for the first time face-to-face, and it was electric to be in the room, to hear the energy of the leaders of the space agencies, of the signatories. And what we found is that there was work we wanted to do, which we did do over a series of workshops and meetings over the last year. And yesterday, we had our second face-to-face Artemis Accords signatory meeting. And we're really starting to get into it, but all we can see very clearly is how much more work there is to do. But I'll tell you about a couple of the things that we made progress on. The first one was transparency and non-interference. We're still struggling with non-interference because it's highly technical and some of the things we don't understand. But we do recognize that the first step is about disseminating the information about the nature, conduct, location, and results of our lunar mission plans. And that's the first step in deconfliction. It also demonstrates through that transparency that we have peaceful intentions and that we're sharing all this information openly. So in this group, the Artemis Accords signatory of both mature and emerging space agencies, we also reaffirmed the importance of advancing opportunities for all emerging space nations to engage in exploration. And we talked about the barriers that small space programs face, whether that's technological, political, or economic. And we agreed as signatories that we share a responsibility to communicate the value proposition of leadership in space policy and the lessons that we've learned as a means to expand opportunities for everyone. And by abiding by these principles, we can create an equitable and inclusive set of opportunities for new nations to experience the benefits. However, we also know that as we expand opportunities, we need to be aware of the consequences when we open the floodgates. So this brings me to the point about ethics. NASA actually has a long tradition of research, including research on Apollo's ethical and societal impacts, bringing in interested scholars to discuss pertinent issues, but it was after the fact. We've done societal and ethical implications research focused on astrobiology, specifically addressing implications about the possible future discovery of life and how we should handle that if that situation occurs. NASA research also informed the first steps that we took as a globe towards orbital debris mitigation with the Orbital Debris Mitigation Standard Practices, which was that first step towards LEO sustainability. And we're engaged in determining how we can go forward with that. And we're also very actively considering planetary protection. So likewise, in the history of the agency, we've actually done a really fantastic job considering human ethics in the Human Research Program. So we make sure that the rights and the welfare of human subjects are adequately protected. We treat people with respect. We make sure that participants understand what science is going to become, but also what is being done to them and any samples they provide, and we ensure they give their consent freely without any pressure. We're always weighing the risk versus benefits in our human research program. And we have independent review boards that guide us with very hard ethical decisions especially, and ensure that we continue to protect the people that are trusting us with their lives. However, medical considerations are not the only ethical considerations that we have. We really have to build on that work and apply similar considerations to other aspects. I'll tell you, this doesn't come naturally. Speaking as a technical person, but especially as a program manager, you're very focused on cost, schedule, and technical. We have work we're executing today. We are sending humans to space. We are building hardware that will send the Artemis II crew and future Artemis crews to space. People are very, very busy, and they're focused on what requirements are in front of them. So how can we take a step out of all those day-to-day processes and the things that we work on as scientists and engineers? We decided that the first thing we do is host a workshop. So we invited a bunch of people that we don't normally talk to. Technical experts, yes, from our side, but also social scientists and ethicists to begin discussing these complicated topics. It was really a remarkable 2.5-day event, and we learned a lot. And we also highlighted how much further we have to go. So I would like to just unpack a few key points about what we learned. So first, and probably fairly obviously, we need to ensure that the values we bring to space are the basis for future exploration. I look at it and I say, we're actually establishing a culture. There's cultures everywhere. Families have cultures, teams have cultures. NASA has one culture, but it also has 1,000 in different organizations. When people work together, they establish a culture. We need to recognize this as we go out into the solar system. It will evolve and change with the experiences of that group of people that do go out and do that exploration. So this is an inherent opportunity for us to establish the most thoughtful behavior norms, what I like to call the best of humanity, and infuse it into that culture. We have got to avoid the mistakes of our human past and be very clear as we go forward. And foundational to the Outer Space Treaty, we've got to make sure that we're inclusive for economic and strategic advantages for all nations, but we also need to work to try to anticipate the consequences of the things that we are doing. So one of the examples of exploration gone right, let's look at that first. The International Space Station, something that I think none of us 25, 30 years ago could have imagined where we would be today. In 1993, the United States and Russia announced plans for the station, and today we know it as ISS. And with our Canadian, European, and Japanese partners, we've since seen 15 countries participate in activities on the station, benefiting from the scientific data and discovery in microgravity. And we share all that scientific data freely. If you're a part of the partnership, you get all the data. We've also learned how to keep humans safe in space for long periods of time, and we've shared that knowledge as well. Frank Rubio, who just broke the US record for longest continuous space flight, saw astronauts from 7 different countries in 371 days aboard station. He told Administrator Nelson and I that by his calculations, he had been in space with 5% of all the people who'd ever gone to space. It's pretty amazing. Now we have commercial providers, private astronaut missions, and more countries are taking advantage of that. And so we see exciting things happening on ISS as it's coming into its full flower of scientific, but also partnership potential. So we're going to continue this model forward. We're committed to that. We're working with lunar infrastructure, with ESA, JAXA, and CSA. They're already partners contributing hardware to the Artemis missions. And new hardware partnerships are emerging. We'll fly our first international crew beyond low Earth orbit on Artemis II, and we will continue that activity going forward. Okay, so let's say we can celebrate this as exploration gone right, a good culture, good set of values, learned how to work together. And as wonderful as that is, we're still figuring different aspects of that out as well. We have conversations every day about how to do it right. One of the areas that perhaps we've struggled more with is sustainability. So I enjoy talking about this topic for a lot of reasons. I will start out by reiterating that in the past, when humanity explored, sometimes it's been done thoughtfully, and then other times it's been done with little regard for the environment around us. So we've done it right, we've done it wrong. So we really need to focus on examples where we've done it right to help guide our path. But it's a very complex topic, and this is one of those things that I really want to flag for everybody. It's a word we've got to define better. Everyone sees a different aspect of what sustainability means. Some see it as a very Earth-centric discussion of sustainability, the toll it takes on our planet to build an ecosystem in outer space, whether it's from creating infrastructure to develop spacecraft or launching them. Others see the challenge of meeting the needs on Earth for space-based resources as harming the environment of another celestial body. But what does that mean on the moon when there's no air or life as we know it? What does that environmental harm really mean? Of course, we definitely think about planetary protection and non-interference with other operations But there are also real concerns about the preservation of heritage sites and sites of both aesthetic and scientific value. And some even think sustainability means the ability to sustain human presence for long periods of time. I have heard this word used in all those different ways. So we really need to start thinking about the words that we're using and make sure that we're talking about the same thing. So I urge you to think about that when you start having a conversation. If you bring up the word sustainability, please stop in your tracks and define it for all of us. We learned at the workshop that we really need to be mindful of the global landscape and the way our cultures influence our perspectives. So, for example, in many cultures, the moon is a sacred place, and our global activity will affect how people perceive and possibly even see the moon. So, I talked about the aesthetic beauty of the moon and Mars. I know I was just overwhelmed at the first pictures that came back from Orion on Artemis 1, as I saw live pictures from the moon for the first time in more than 50 years. It is a unique and beautiful place with a powerful raw beauty. It's our closest celestial neighbor and linked to us by the force of gravity and also by the force of culture. Well, here in the United States, we work hard to preserve our national parks so that everyone can enjoy them. The UN has World Heritage Sites. So this balancing the preserving of the moon's beautiful and pristine condition with the need to utilize in situ resources in a responsible way is a complex problem that we have to start talking about now. We can't sustain our presence without use of in situ resources. So this is something that cultures on Earth have been doing for many thousands of years, balancing the needs to survive with the needs to ensure that the capability exists for generations to come. It's not a problem today. We're doing very small scientific samples, and they're minuscule impact. It'll be years before we're ready to do a lot more than that. So we've got some time to think it through, but we need to start now. And just as a reminder, unless we figure out a way to remove it, the trash we leave there will be there forever. These things should give us pause. We honor the human drive to explore and learn about the solar system, but we need to stop and think about those unanticipated consequences. We also need to make sure that as we're thinking about them, we're looking through more than one cultural lens. So let's talk about the future. We recognize that as engineers and space scientists, we are not the experts on this topic, and we're trying to figure out how best to communicate to those who are. So despite knowing that we need to engage on ethical issues, we definitely lack a framework and a shared language on how to do it. What we do is very complicated to outsiders. We use a lot of words and acronyms that aren't familiar. They don't understand how decisions get made, or if they've only watched science fiction, they don't understand what we can and cannot do in space. Even the same word or acronym can mean different things depending on the context. Sustainability is one of them that I brought up. But I'd also like to remind you that if you want to talk to the Deputy Administrator of NASA about private astronaut missions, you're going to talk to Pam about PAMs. And if you think that's not confusing, you probably all have your favorite hated acronym. Bringing together all those experts across many fields presented a lot of communication challenges that we had to work through in that workshop. And there were potential misunderstandings that we had to work through too. So we've really got to do more of this cross-pollination activity so that social scientists can help us, and we can help develop a shared language that we all understand. What was very, very interesting about the workshops was that our participants were hugely interested in continuing engagement. We knew we couldn't conquer the whole topic in a 2.5-day workshop, but I think that's how you know you're onto something, when everybody wants to continue the conversation, and there was definitely that vibe. It was fun to bring people from such diverse backgrounds together who'd never worked before together. They got a lot of new perspectives on both sides, both the technical and the social, and felt energized by the discussions, and now they're off trying to figure out how they can form their own new community. There's a few things that we can look at for examples of how other industries have approached this problem. We really need to increase awareness within our own and the broader community and help to build an industry-wide approach to this about ethical implications. So our ask of you is to think about how we as a space community can incorporate ethical considerations and research better into our programs. So there were some examples that were brought up by experts of other things that had been done. So I'll name a few of them. The European Commission research programs for responsible innovation, but also the Human Genome Project, which was funded by the U.S. National Institutes of Health, the Department of Energy as well, and they dedicated research funding towards the ethical, legal, and societal implications of the Human Genome Project. And they looked at things like privacy issues. They brought together diverse experts. They realized that they needed to have better ties to the real decision makers. They could come up with ideas, but it had to be actually put into whether it's law or regulation or even just practices. They were successful in getting regulations changed, however. So these are just interesting examples that kind of are thoughts for us to start from and think about how we can do this better. I think there was another thing, too. I talk about regulations. Well, when we did the Human Genome Project in the United States, we were working with a single legal framework, the one inside the United States at the time as we were approaching these ethical considerations. We're dealing with a single regime anymore. We are all together. We are really going to be incredibly challenged to harmonize not just the regulatory frameworks that we have today, but also if we decide to take on some of these ethical issues, how we're going to harmonize those as well. We just really have to create an environment that's respectful of people's beliefs, but is also thoughtful. We just want to make space a place where everybody wants to be and is happy to be there and feels included. We're proud that the Artemis Accords is a first step, and we look forward to engaging with other forums like the UN Committee on Peaceful Uses of Outer Space. So I want to conclude by saying, as we build the lunar ecosystem, we're going to see new industries, new technologies, new capabilities. Nations around the world are going to approach the moon. They'll have economic benefits, but there's got to be an equitable playing field to make sure that future countries that have emerging space capabilities can also share in those opportunities. And just like a doctor says, do no harm, we don't want anyone to be harmed by the advancements that we're doing. There have been phenomenal engineering feats in history, whether it's the pyramids of Egypt, the Panama Canal, the assembly of the International Space Station. Humanity has risen to the challenge, but nobody's tried to do it from 250,000 miles away. So we're really creating a very unique ecosystem and a unique culture. We have the opportunity to learn from the past and build the ecosystem in a positive way. And the key is we can't just keep our eyes on the scientific prize, which is all too easy as technical people to do. We need to look at all those implications. We want to learn from the lessons of the past. So today I've raised a lot of questions, and I haven't given you any answers because we really don't have them, just things to think about. Perhaps that is unsatisfying, but at least I can leave you with one thing that I am 100% sure about. We need to do this together. So that is our charge to you, is to start thinking about this as we go forward. Thank you.